Welcome back to the show, guys. Jess, first of all, your reaction to this news.
You saw my reaction. Like, I was just waiting on them to pull out of the deal. Like, that was it. Because once that happened, now I felt like we could just kind of move on and get the deal done. So I'm ecstatic. I think that this deal, for many different reasons, is so important for Arsenal, smashing the English record, smashing our own record as well, potential England captain, like all those things matter. And I think that's why Arsenal really wanted Declan Rice to really give like a statement. But he's also a quality player. And I know that the narrative over the next couple of days will change. He'll go from a player that's perfect for City and should be sitting next to Rodri and winning trophies to a bang average footballer that wanted to go to Arsenal and won't win anything. But to be honest, I don't really care. Like, we know the truth. This guy is good. He wants to come to Arsenal. He made his stance clear, and that's why we are where we are now. So, yeah, I am ecstatic. Like, I'm super excited. So, yeah, obviously puts pressure on Arsenal. Like, I think yesterday when the bid first went in, the first question from rivals is, "So does this win you the league? Don't you feel like you should win the league? Don't you feel like you should win the Champions League?" And so when you start buying players like this, the expectations become so much greater. But for me, I'm ready for that pressure to be on because I think Arsenal are in a good position to push forward for bigger trophies.
Yeah, I hear that 100%. Like KJ, from your point of view, because we spoke about it last night, City have pulled out. Not a lot of people expected it. I'm sure there's going to be a spin of value in the market and not worth it. But what do you put this down to? Is it just the player has picked Arsenal?
I think, yeah. I mentioned it yesterday that Man City would pull out because what's the point of spending 105 to 110 million on a player who's more likely to reject you than accept you? Man City are notorious for pulling out when they feel like their valuation has been exceeded and they're just not going to do it. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think the main thing is Arsenal being the favored place for Declan Rice, and then the second part is Man City are in a position where they don't actually need to spend 100 billion plus on a midfielder. They're signing Kovacic, the treble champions. So they're in a strong position within themselves. Now, obviously, Man City fans will say the same thing out of copium. But the main thing is like Declan Rice wanted Arsenal. Everyone knew for a long time that Arsenal was the place. And hey, you can be treble champions. Doesn't mean every single player will want you. But Arsenal, fair play, man. Fair play. You put the money down. You put the money where your mouth is. You came back with a vengeance and made sure you offered something that Man City wouldn't even touch. Like, it would have been easy to be like, okay, here's 80 plus 10, or here's 85 plus 10, or 90 plus 5. It would have been easy to do that, make it long, drag it out, and hopefully get the bid accepted. But man, Arsenal said no. 105. What now? And no one can chat to them in this deal. No one can say anything to them. People saying, they've overpaid. It is what it is. Like, this is what it takes to get the player out of the club. One thing that is funny though, someone did tweet and someone's been discussing in the group chat. How many signings have gone well that Man City have pulled away from? Your Freds, your Alexis, your Jorginhos, all these players coming in, Maguire. So that would say, I don't think this will be the same case. I think Arsenal and Declan Rice will be a match made in heaven. I think they'll do really well, really, really well together. As a rival, I hope it crashes and burns. I hope it's a 100 million pound flop. You know what I mean? 007, whatever you want to call him. I hope that's the case. But in terms of just pure football, well done to Arsenal, fair play, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon.
Mate, I hear that. Do you know what I would say is a little different maybe about those other deals? Is the vast majority of them. So when you think of Fred and when you think of Alexis Sanchez as standout examples, the Man United manager at the time didn't want those players. Man United decided to go and hijack them. The manager said, that doesn't really fit my system. He's not the profile of player that I want. The difference in this is that Arsenal were the ones leading this race. It was almost City that tried to hijack rather than the other way around. So listen, I'm the same as you. I hope this doesn't work for Arsenal as a Man United fan. But do you know what? I've said it many times before. Me and Lee Gunner have had this argument. Arteta's success rate at when it comes to these big signings is huge. In terms of looking at next season, Jess, now that you've done, you're going to do 100 million on him, 65 on Kai Havertz. You know, it's 200 million essentially on Kai Havertz, Mace, Rice, and Timber, coupled with the squad you've already got. The expectation, I mean, the expectations have now risen for Arsenal massively, surely.
I think they rose the minute that we finished second, or even when we got in the title race, to be honest. Like, I think the top four discussion became, a lot more advanced in terms of like title race and should Arsenal be winning these big trophies and all this kind of stuff. So I think the expectation actually grew from the season. And now we need to match that expectation with the type of transfer window that we're trying to do. And it looks like that's what Arsenal are attempting to do, is match that expectation with the transfers. And so, yeah, I think as Arsenal fans, we need to, there's always balance in the conversations, right? It's like, obviously, we want to win big trophies and we should be expecting those, but also remember that like we are taking steps towards that, and like we can't expect to be the Invincibles tomorrow, So yeah, but my expectations for next season were kind of, already written out before the season ended. I think we should be in another title race, and like when I mean in a title race, like we need to be very close to winning it if we don't win it, within a point, within 2 points. At least the quarterfinals in the Champions League. I'd love to go further, and we need to win silverware. I don't really care what kind of silverware it is. We just need to win something. And so, yeah, I think and I think that's another reason why people were like, some Arsenal fans were almost not desperate, but wanting us to leave the race last night when we put in that bid and it wasn't immediately accepted, was because the reality of buying players like Declan Rice is that the expectations become a lot more. And you get comfortable in the bubble of like, I think Terry already said it, we didn't spend that much, so the expectation should be that, top four, it's fine. And so we are definitely leaving those conversations. And so Arsenal fans also need to update their expectations on the season. Like, there's going to be very high expectations of Arsenal next season. Very. And it's not just the players, it's the manager, because Arteta also pushed for both Rice and Havertz. So if they don't work, that's on him, so somebody has to, to take that responsibility if it doesn't work. So yeah, I'm ready for the pressure, but the expectation has got to be winning trophies for sure next season. 100% above anything else.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It simply has to be. We've got some super chats we're going to go to here. Storm is coming, is what Marco says. Today I feel Guattari. I like that. Hoping for positive breaking news from you, Terry. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty positive. Remember, it's not my news. This comes from a number of other journalists, the Daily Mail, the Manchester Evening News. And I will say this as well, by the way. I know the Ornsteins and the Fabrizios. I respect both of them. But I know a lot of you are like, oh, I've got to wait for them to say it so I believe it. Remember, it was not them that broke this news. It's not always the big names that break news. Don't just don't retweet. When they say it, don't retweet it. Go to the originator and retweet their stuff and support that journalist, please, because I think that's a fair thing to do. This is huge for so many reasons, is what Daniel Bliss says. Yeah, I think there's so many here. And I know that City are going to be protected with they didn't get rejected. They walked away. You've all seen me say it, but this is why, by the way, I don't mind taking it on. I say about my own club, when we walk away, we didn't walk away. Chelsea haven't walked away from Onana. It's because he wants Man United. We know, we're not dumb. We know this. You know what I'm saying? Eid Mubarak to all of the Terrace. Love the show. Thank you, my friend. And yeah, anyone who's celebrating Eid today, have a wonderful and a blissed day. And I'm sure if you're an Arsenal fan today and you're celebrating Eid, it's a little bit, obviously Eid far more important, but it's a little bit a double bubble for you. In terms of next season, KJ, what do you think they need to achieve minimum, Arsenal, for it to be looked as a successful season?
Minimum FA Cup or Carabao Cup, like in the bag, guaranteed. Title challenge within 3 points this year, and taking it all. No capitulation. None of this collapsing with a few games to go. They need to go all the way to at least two games away from winning the league. That's what they need to do. And to the Champions League, I'm going to be fair to them in the Champions League because I haven't been there in a while. The European experience is definitely a factor. We've seen it over the years. So quarterfinals, if they can't get to the quarterfinals with this team, that is a worry. That is a worry. So one trophy out of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, a really, really good close title challenge, and then the quarterfinals of the Champions League. I think is a fair expectation for Arsenal. And if the one thing I'm worried about for Arsenal is the fan base. I can see a lot of the Arsenal fan base very easily crumbling to the pressure, and if anyone says anything to them, it's no, we're still in this building phase. Like they'll find ways to make it up that the fact that they're not in where they're supposed to be, and those excuses can come out. Hopefully that don't happen. I want Arsenal fans to go in with chest, with belief in their team, because their last 2 years, has shown major progression. So if they're finding ways to find excuses after dropping Rice, after dropping all these different players, Havertz, Timber, and potentially some more, I'll be disappointed. I really will, because you guys are now considered one of the best teams in Europe, apparently. So
no, I think most Gooners will agree with you on that. Jess, what do you take? Like they can't. I mean, I've just done the maths on it after this summer window, and you're likely to spend more than 200 million because I don't see you stopping at just Havertz.
No.
So if you say you do stop at 200 million, that takes Arteta's spend to just under 700 million. There can be no more rebuild excuses next year. It's got to be start winning now, Arteta.
Yeah, of course. And I don't think, like, the thing about it is, like, that's exactly what Arteta has said. He's never shied away from it and been like, well, we're in like this process, so don't expect anything. So I think him pushing for these players and what he said echoes what all of us, or most of us, kind of feel is like it's time to get going. We're not really in a rebuild anymore. The team is built. Obviously, you're gonna fine tune things, but I remember you were talking to like Hussam about this. A lot of us have talked about this, that Arsenal's like the last step was to get your Van Dijk / Alisson signings. I know that's like, it's kind of, that's their thing, and they needed a goalkeeper and a center back, but Rice is that for us. And people want to talk about, a player that, Pep wanted and they stepped away from. How good do they do? Virgil van Dijk was one of those. Man City wanted Virgil van Dijk, and he ended up going to Liverpool, and he did a really good job. So I think we're in the end game here in terms of the project. It's built. Obviously, it needs to get better. It needs fine tuning. But yeah, no longer in a project. It's time to go. Something else that's kind of interesting, though, is that like, Terry and I were talking about this, is that the domino effect that this is going to create. Fabrizio Romano just said something about Caicedo. We spoke about that. Like literally, Brighton were just waiting around to see what was going to happen with the Rice deal. And then now that that's done, now they're going to start talking to Chelsea for Caicedo. So all those little dominoes are going to start falling over. Which
around, Jess. I think it's Chelsea they've got stressed now. The Rice is gone. Like Man United are lurking around Caicedo because they're playing hardball with Mount. They've got to do something. Man United need to find a solution for Mount. Now, I'm not trying to say Mount's on the level of Declan Rice, but for Man United, he's going to be needed. All these teams. You know what's funny as well? All of this is going on. Spurs has basically signed James Maddison, and no one cares. No one cares.
I said that this morning. I was like, no one cares.
I'm going to say as well. Maybe Eni Aluko had a point yesterday.
Wait, listen. I was about to say that as well.